You're listening to the Undefeated Bears podcast with Jay Clark, releasing every Monday at 9 a.m. all season long. Follow us on Twitter at Podcast Bears for the latest Undefeated Bears updates.
It's the Undefeated Bears podcast. Once again, we welcome you. Thank you for all the first-time listeners. Thank you for the returning listeners. And thank you for those who are on the way. This week, we got some more football to talk. We're also digging into this Jay-Z NFL partnership, man. I think we got a lot to talk about this week. Let's get to it. This is the Undefeated Bears podcast. Keep it locked. Another week of football in the books. And may I say, Bears fans, let's take a little word from a common foe. RELAX. Relax, man. I'm in a couple Bears fan groups on Facebook, and people are just tripping out, man. 0-2 in the preseason. You got people bashing Chase, Daniel. You got the kicker controversy, people coming at those guys. It's not the end of the world, people. Did we forget, man? Are we so hyped on this season that we are overjudging our team? Do we realize it's preseason football? The most unimportant and relevant professional sports games there are. This is not real football. It's a scrimmage. It's damn near third tempo if you watch half the games, especially when you got any starters on the field. I mean, relax. It'll be okay. We don't have to blow every team out in the preseason, people. We're evaluating talent, deciding who's going to be on the roster. And it's crazy to have to explain this to some people, man. It's like, just chill out. September 5th is around the corner. I know we're antsy, Bears fans. I know we're antsy for this season, but we have to wait. 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks till we take on old Cheesehead and Aaron Rodgers. 2 weeks till we are crowned once again. Top of the NFC North for the time being. Defense is already visibly hungry. Clearly already establishing a great turnover culture. I mean, guys are thirsty for the football, man. It's great to see. This team will be okay. It's preseason, going on week 3. And I think us Bears fans are just antsy, man. We're ready for some real football. Keep it locked right here on the Undefeated Bears podcast. We got a fun-filled episode. We'll talk about some fantasy football coming right your way next. Fantasy football season. And I would be dead wrong not to talk a little fantasy football with you guys, man. Looks like to be a fun season ahead. I got 2 drafts today. On this very day I'm recording this episode. Definitely let you guys know how those drafts went next week. But today specifically, this is the Undefeated Bears podcast, where we want to focus on our Bears from a fantasy perspective. Now, take a look at Mitch Trubisky. As far as fantasy, you know we love Mitch. What he can bring to the table. You know, he can do it with his legs. He can do it with his arms. He seems to be in what could be a prolific offense. I would label Mitch a low-end sleeper as far as quarterbacks rank. You know, if the offense breaks out, Mitch could easily be a top 5, I would say 5 to 8 quarterback in a fantasy outlook. Mitch could easily put up a lot of points if this offense is as prolific as it could be on paper. You know, this could easily be a 27, 28-point offense. If that's the case, Mitchell Trubisky will be a high-scoring fantasy QB. So, you know, if that doesn't happen, if the offense doesn't pan out to be high-scoring, then he will likely be just a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, but still good value for where he'll probably be drafted at. So, Mitch Trubisky, I don't think you could go wrong with him as long as you got some studs surrounding him on the rest of your fantasy roster. Mitchell Trubisky should be a great fantasy quarterback pick for his value. Looking at the running backs from a fantasy perspective, one guy I would stay away from, maybe it goes without saying, is Mike Davis. He will be the third back in this offense. David Montgomery looks to be promising. It looks like he'll get a lot of carries. And Tariq Cohen's going to be all over the field. So catching the ball, running the ball, Tariq Cohen, I believe, will exceed his value, given where he's ranked in the drafts I've been participating in. Looks like Tariq Cohen will exceed his value. I think people have forgotten too quickly what he brings to the table as a playmaker. I will have Tariq Cohen on at least one of my season-long teams and definitely will toy around him in daily fantasy because Tariq Cohen is always a big play threat. Between Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery, honestly, I couldn't tell you who I would pick first. I lean towards Tariq just because of the veteran experience and, we know what we're getting with him. Montgomery is a little bit of a risk. I would call him a moderate risk, but high reward. He's going to be in those touchdown situations. He's going to be in those short yardage situations. He can catch. So he has the potential to be, a 3-down back, but what's hurting his value is the fact that he's playing with Tariq Cohen. So it's kind of a toss-up with Bears running backs. Overall, I would probably stay away if you could. That's not saying they're not talented. I just think that they're going to be used as a tandem, Tariq and David Montgomery. Fantasy-wise, man, our receivers, I would honestly stay away. Even if this offense breaks out, it's a little tough to tell preseason who the primary targeted receiver would be. Now, the easy answer would be Allen Robinson. If he stays healthy, if this offense is going to be as great as it could be, you would expect Allen Robinson to have about 1,100 yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns, because that's the type of talent that he is. Now, he just has to stay on the field. Allen Robinson, without the injury history, I would take him in a heartbeat on this offense. But then again, without his injury history, he probably wouldn't even be on our roster. But, Allen Robinson is a heck of a player, big receiver, great hands, good route runner, veteran leader. It's just a matter of staying healthy. I want Allen Robinson on my fantasy football team. But it's a little bit of a risk, admittedly. And as far as tight ends, Trey Burton is probably the only guy you're going to take in a preseason fantasy football draft. He has to stay healthy. He has to stay mentally focused. Trey Burton, he has all the talent. He has a skill set. He's playing in a good offense for a tight end position. Guy just has to be on the field, I would take Trey Burton, especially if you have Mitch Trubisky as your quarterback. Trey Burton is a great draft pick for where he's ranked compared to other tight ends. So Trey Burton, I believe, low risk, solid reward. Tight ends are pretty much flat across the board last year and going into this year. There's the cream of the crop. George Kittle, Travis Kelce. Those guys are at the top of the list, but, there's no more Gronk. There's no more of that. There's some young guys coming up. You kind of have your choice of the field when it comes to tight end. So, don't sleep on Trey Burton for a tight end. I would definitely be interested in grabbing him if I didn't have one late in the draft and he was sitting there floating around. Definitely do not be afraid to take Trey Burton this season. And this defense, from a fantasy perspective, last year they carried me to the playoffs, I would say. They were like having another receiver or running back out there, man, the points they were putting up. I would be a fool not to go after the Bears defense again this year. You got touchdown potential. Not going to allow very many points. They're going to get some sacks, going to get some picks. This Bears defense is probably going to be very sought after in your fantasy drafts. Likely going to be the first defense off the board in most fantasy drafts, and I'm going to take them early. I wouldn't even say I'm going to reach for them. I'm going to take the Bears when I believe it's time to take the Bears defense because I think this defense is going to get you 8 to 12 points every game on average, man. They're not going to give up very many points, and they're probably going to score some touchdowns. So, Bears defense, lock them in. They're not on my roster, I'm pissed. I'm be completely honest with you. If the Bears defense is on someone else's roster that's not mine, I'm not a happy camper because I know what these guys can do.
Sorry to put it this way, but would you kneel or would you stand?
Okay, I think we've passed kneeling. I think it's time to go into actionable items. I know we're stuck on it because it's a real thing, but it's a form of protest. I support protests across the board. We need to bring light to the issue. I think everyone knows what the issue is, and we're done with that.
Jay-Z and Roc Nation have partnered with the NFL in what looks to be a great move for the improvements, the enlightenment, the spreading of the word of social justice, man. Now, his position with the NFL seems to be a music creative director of some sort, primarily going to be deciding the musical artists and attracting musical talent for big performances such as the Super Bowl, one of the biggest concerts on planet Earth. But this is a social justice partnership, as described by both the NFL and Roc Nation. In this snippet, I believe Jay-Z was challenging the room, challenging them to think outside of the box, think differently, let go of the norms of the conversation, let go of the cliche statements and solutions and think, what can we do, man? And I love Jay for that. I love Jay for taking control of the room, not letting people take the easy way out. One guy had the nerve, the audacity, to ask him the question, would you stand or would you kneel? And Jay was just taken off by it, man. He said, I think we're past that. I think we're past that. It's time to take action. And I love his take on the whole situation. Recognize Jay-Z has already been involved in social issues. It goes without saying. The Khalif Browder story, the Free Meek documentary. Jay-Z is all for us, man. It's not a secret. This isn't just a bona fide selfish business move. I think this is actually for the greater good. Which makes me hurt by the comments of one such as Eric Reed, who called him a hypocrite, a sellout, and I don't understand where this commentary could possibly come from. I believe Mr. Reed is very selfish in his take on what Jay-Z is doing with the NFL. I think he's seeking a little bit of self-glorification on his take on the Jay-Z situation. He says his primary motivations are about Kaepernick and why he's not employed by the NFL, and calling Jay-Z a sellout for taking money based on social justice and partnering with the NFL. Eric Reed does not have a case to me, because how can you throw shade at a Jay-Z for taking a little bread and trying to do something for social justice issues with the NFL? How can you fault Jay-Z for taking a check from the same organization that you're playing for? I can't understand that. And if it's about Kaepernick, then why are you playing and he's not, Eric Reed? That ain't got nothing to do with Jay-Z. So I think Eric Reed needs to chill, stop focusing on the now, and realize that what Jay-Z is doing is putting himself in position to bring equality and social justice for the future. And if Jay-Z is able to sneak in as an NFL owner, I wouldn't even say sneak in. Jay-Z has earned his keep and his right to be an NFL owner. Period. And so have many other black people in the past, and it just hasn't happened yet. How are there 32 white NFL owners? Riddle me that. Are black people less competent? Are we less financially savvy? Do we have less opportunities to become NFL owners? Probably. But you think they can hold Jay-Z out? We'll see. So I believe Jay-Z's partnership with the NFL, Roc Nation, is a step towards the future and the right direction. I can't fathom how Eric Reed could see anything different. I'm hurt by his comments. That once again, someone has stepped forward to bring light to social justice. And once again, someone of his own kind is trying to rip him down. We have to do better, people. We have to do better. But next week, we'll keep it football. We got some more preseason to talk. And man, September 5th is just around the corner. September 5th is coming soon, where we open the NFL season to take on the Pack. Let's go, man.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Undefeated Bears podcast. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest updates. Win, lose, or draw, Bears fans remain undefeated.